Donald Trump and Bill Barr and the Republican Party, they've been harping away on the threat of Antifa. So let's see how big of a threat they really are. This is from NPR, and it's a fascinating breakdown. U.S. Attorney General William Barr has repeatedly blamed anti-fascist activists for the violence that has erupted during demonstrations over George Floyd's death. But federal court records show no sign of so-called Antifa links so far in cases brought by the Justice Department. NPR has reviewed court documents of 51 individuals facing federal charges in connection with the unrest. As of Tuesday morning, none is alleged to have links to the Antifa movement. Of the cases brought so far, 20 involve allegations related to arson, 16 involve the illegal possession of a firearm, more often than not by a felon. Another 8 people face charges related to inciting a riot or civil disorder. The single instance in which an extremist group is mentioned in court documents is a case against 3 Nevada men. Federal prosecutors allege the trio belong to the right-wing Boogaloo movement that wants to bring about a civil war. The men have been charged with plotting violence during the Las Vegas protests. Zero Antifa. And these are the people who are facing charges for turning the otherwise peaceful protests violent, making them riots or looting. Zero Antifa. Zero. I think it was Ken Klippenstein who tweeted it. He said the threat of Antifa terrorism is about as real as the threat of Saddam's WMDs. Zero. I don't know how else to say it, man. Zero. So in other words, it turns out that these protests, by and large, sparked by the death of George Floyd, they're people who want to end the police brutality. They're out there. And then, yes, there are some people who went out there who are just looking for violence and looking to take advantage of a terrible situation. People who are looters and rioters. But the idea that it's some sort of highly organized left-wing movement that's infiltrating every corner of society and trying to lead a Marxist revolution. I'm sure if you talk to many, Marxists, they'll tell you, I wish that was the case. But as you guys know, and as I know, because I'm on the left and I've been involved in a lot of movements, we're a hell of a lot more disorganized than anybody would like to admit. Are you kidding me? I mean, nothing but love and respect for Bernie Sanders, but look at how that campaign crashed and burned. The lack of organization, the lack of leadership, the kind of scatterbrained default mindset of lefties is actually a real impediment to getting change. Whereas on the right, even though you could argue, I think they're ideologically crazy, they actually believe in organization and leadership and hierarchy and even like authoritarianism and disciplinarianism in a way that the left does not. When you have a movement that's based on like equality and democracy, then you tend to not want anybody to kind of rise up and be a leader, which is why Antifa, one of the reasons why, they're totally decentralized. As Jimmy Dore said, where can I get my Antifa card? Where can I go to a meeting? Where can I pay my dues? The answer is nowhere. So now, by the way, I'm not saying Antifa doesn't exist. Of course they exist. Everybody knows they exist. But they're a very decentralized, thing. No organization, no structure, no hierarchy, no membership card, no meeting. It's just like when you see a situation where you have the Proud Boys or you have some white supremacist group or something, come out in droves. Usually in those situations, that's when Antifa shows up and, does what they do. Now, there is disagreement among the ranks of Antifa and people who call themselves Antifa. Some believe in violence, as in property violence. Others do not. But, again, the idea that there's some sort of large, highly organized, adaptable, amorphous threat is just the right-wing caricature of Antifa. And again, I think you could talk to many people in Antifa who would tell you, I wish we were highly organized. I wish we were amorphous. I wish we were adaptable. And I wish we were as big of a threat as they think we are. So, yeah, it's the convenient scapegoat. If you look at these protests and then you look at the riots and you look at the looting, if you could pin that all on just Antifa, well, then it becomes the boogeyman that you can use to justify more police crackdowns or using the Insurrection Act or more funding and more militarization of police. They could use that as the convenient excuse to kind of double down on the status quo and authoritarianism and the police state. And it's a way to also scare your average run-of-the-mill Trump-supporting Republican into being more involved and more supportive of the right. It's a unifying call on the right to act like Antifa is this super organized, highly adaptable, efficient threat. And I'm sorry, man, but they're really just not. I saw a tweet earlier, Ben Burgess retweeted it, and it was somebody describing what was happening in one of the protest movements. They like took over a city hall or something, and one person grabbed the mic and was talking about how they're gender fluid, and then somebody else grabbed it and was talking about something involving race, and then somebody screamed, like, how dare you take away the mic from a black person in a Black Lives Matter protest, and then, so it was literally like a stereotype, a caricature of the goofy, overly identity-obsessed leftists. Like, I think that's more reflective of the reality of the nature of what's happening than, like, violent, organized Antifa thugs sort of being effective and adaptable in using violence and, meeting their political goals. I think it's much more the other kind of caricature of the left is much more prevalent in these protests. So, like, disorganized, sometimes overly obsessed with identity, a little silly and narcissistic. And that's not to say all the protests are like that. I'm just specifically referring to the one that, Ben Burgess retweeted that had what was going on in one of these city halls that was taken over. But, like, the left as an organized, violent, revolutionary force don't make me laugh. I mean, it's not the case. So, and nor would I even really want it to be the case, because I don't believe in violence unless it is for self-defense. And I think that research on the civil rights movement kind of proves the case that when you're very peaceful and the cops act with wanton violence against you, that's when people kind of flock to the cause and see what you're talking about and understand and feel sympathy. So I wouldn't even want it to be the case, just so everybody understands. But it most definitely is not the case that they're this sort of giant threat.